This is deliveranceministry.fm VideoCast number 56. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of deliveranceministry.fm, where we give you proven insights about the demonic realm and deliverance ministry so you can wage spiritual warfare more effectively. Once again, it's Dr. Don and Dr. Phyllis at the mics here. We are happy to be here with you.
Oh, indeed we are.
Yep, this is one of those topics I think we're going to have today that's hasn't got a lot of airtime from us, a lot of coverage, and maybe not talked about in a lot of different places. So maybe it might be the first time you've heard some of these things. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But if you've been listening to our podcast, I mean, we cover a lot of different topics in the realm of spiritual warfare and deliverance ministry. We talk about open doors for demonic torment. We've got articles and course and podcasts about generational curses and word curses and occultic sin and sexual sin and abuse and all sorts of different entry points. And so today we want to expand on a topic that I think we probably touched on in some other podcast, but we're going to go a little deeper here because it just we've seen a lot of this in clients come in, and this idea about demonic torment that can be upon a baby, even as a child in their mother's womb.
Yeah,
and so that's what we're, and you know, obviously one of them that we're probably not going to talk about too much here. I wouldn't, because we've talked about it before, is this realm of generational curses, right? I mean,
right.
Just by virtue of what of the parents that babies have, if you
right.
like, they can have these curses upon them, just, you know, apart from anything else, just because of things that are in the bloodline. So,
right, in the blood.
And so those are things. But we're going to be talking today about, like I say, some other things that can be happening in and around the time of birth, right, and during pregnancy, that can result in demonic torment on babies in the womb. And so one of the biggest ones that we've seen, and there's studies out there, and I think Phil's going to talk about that, is this notion of words that are spoken over a child in the womb.
Right. And I think I wanted to start with that because words have power, and we've talked about that a lot. And there's a lot to sound and what you speak and the power of sound. And so some of the scriptures that I would just want to reference over that before I even start about how babies can even learn from sound in the womb are, the first one is in John 6, verse 63. And it says, "It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit and they are life." So words bring things to life, okay? Psalm 33, 6-9 says, "By the word of the Lord the heavens were made," and that tells us where our life comes from. So there's so much power in words, and we've gone over this many times. In Hebrews 11:3, it says, "Worlds were framed by the word of God." So words have power. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. We know that from Proverbs 18:21. But there are studies that are shown over babies that learn from those wombs during their last trimester in the womb that they're actually learning. There's a sound processing part of their brain that becomes active in the last trimester of pregnancy. So basically, you need to be very careful what you speak over a pregnant woman or around a baby. Because
I think it's worth mentioning that we talk about words of life, the Spirit's words of life, but people can have words of death too.
Yes.
The demonic realm works because that's that other side of it. That's the evil side, the darkness. That there's a creative power of the demonic realm to carry things out that are spoken on the demonic side as well.
Right. Because it says in Revelation 12 that the Satan, it's talking about the dragon in that scripture, but it says that Satan is the dragon, waits for the moment the child is born to snatch him. So any of these things that are spoken over the baby while the baby is in the womb opens up a legal right door for the enemy to come in and snatch at the moment of birth, which I think is, I've seen that with different children. So, it says, just to get back to some of the studies, it says that as a fetus grows inside the mother's belly, it can hear sounds from the outside world. It can actually understand them well enough to retain memories of them after birth, according to some of the new research. So I think, it was kind of funny. It even said a 1988 study suggested that newborns recognize the theme song of their mother's favorite soap opera. I don't think there's a lot of soap operas on right now, but you know what? The babies, they kind of came to life when they played that.
I'd be interested to know how they.
They did say
come up with
88.
some of these things, but I think these are scientific studies where people have done and through various ways of affirming and confirming that babies recognize and hear things that are in the womb. Right? Who did that? Who did some of these studies?
Well, that study, it's hard for me to pronounce his name, but Eno Partanian from the University of Helsinki said that you can hear the rhythm of speech and they can hear the rhythm of music and so on in the womb. So it's interesting, I think, as well. But some of the other studies that they mentioned as I was reading, and I can't cite where they actually came from, but they did what they called nipple testing, where they gave the baby a certain way the baby would suck on a nipple. It would actually produce the mother's sound. And if they sucked on it a different way, it produced a man's sound that was foreign to them. And the babies would always shift the way they suckled on that nipple to hear the mother's sound, the mother's voice, because it was what gave them comfort. So there is a distinct recognition.
So they can hear their mother's voice even they learn it and recognize it while they're in the womb before they were born. This isn't after born, which we would understand.
Right.
This is before birth.
Right. So it does say their sound processing parts of their brain become active in the last trimester. So that's why, you're reading to your baby. A lot of us talk to the baby. That's
singing
all
to the
good.
baby, worship
Singing
music.
To the baby. Yeah, that's all really good, very comforting, and it does work. But like you had mentioned earlier, when you speak things like death over a baby while the baby is in the womb, that brought back a certain blog that I wrote probably back in 2011. But I had a client that came in whose baby was affected by that. She had, was in a good church, and for whatever reason, one of the prayer warriors, one of the strong intercessors in the church, blurted out what came into her mind immediately, that the baby was going to be born dead. Now, why in the world she released those words, wow, I'm not even going to begin to go there. But it was. And then after she released it, she recognized that was a demonic assignment that she actually was used to speak over this child. And she repented and she took it back, and broke the word curses. But the enemy had grabbed a hold of that, right? That baby was actually born not breathing, did not breathe for about 5 minutes, and suffered some, oxygen deprivation to the brain. And that's when I got a hold of them, because they had some sensory issues. But nonetheless, how that word of death that was spoken over the baby while it was in the womb, the enemy waited for that baby to be born to capitalize it and grab it. Yeah. So that's just one example of how babies are learning and those words. The other thing I wanted to mention too, because, we always talk about, we want a balanced approach here, and we talk about, science as well. You can't lop it all out, because we are part of that. Our bodies are made and formed, and there can be an emotional state of a woman during her pregnancy can also have an effect on the child. So if you have a depressed mother or an anxious mother, the power of the transmitted chemicals, this has been brought up by a well-known obstetrician and author, Christine Northrup, back in 2005. She shared that if a pregnant mother is going through high levels of fear and anxiety, she creates a metabolic cascade of hormones known as cytokines that are produced in the mother's immune system, and they're affected, including also her child's. Chronic anxiety in the mother can set the stage for a whole array of trauma-based results, such as prematurity, complications of birth, death, and even miscarriage. And the opposite is also true. When the mother is feeling healthy and happy, she produces oxytocin, and this is often called the molecule of bonding or belonging. The presence of this component actually creates feelings of bonding, and it strengthens the immunity of the baby. The neurotransmitters inside the mother's body create a chemical and a physical imprint on the baby's brain and the body. And the message that's imprinted is that there is safety and there's peace, and the baby feels secure and well taken care of. So can a baby learn in the womb? I think that research absolutely points in that direction. They certainly can. One of the examples that I had of that was I had a client whose mother was young when she conceived her out of wedlock, and she was afraid to tell her parents that she was pregnant. So she actually hid her entire pregnancy right up until the day that she gave birth. She wore heavy trench coats and was ashamed, basically, of being pregnant.
She must have been in a cold weather climate or something. It's like, how do you keep that? That's hard to visualize, but I guess it's doable.
Yeah, well, she did. And so this woman that came in was, she was probably 50 years old by the time she got to me. But that's what she said was characterized of her entire life, was that she was full of shame and that she was hiding. She was constantly hiding. And retreating and fearful, because that's, part of that was transmitted to her mother. And then the enemy, of course, boy, he's just waiting right there so it's a two-prong approach, I believe. I mean, there is a lot to, science and chemicals and neurotransmitters and this metabolic cascade. But then again, you've got to address the demonic realm of it as well. So when she came in, we had to call out those spirits of shame and hiding and cowering and fear that had really tormented her most of her life. And, I'll never forget it. When we were praying over her, I really sincerely saw that the Holy Spirit was just giving her like a golden invitation to her healing. And he handed it to her. In fact, it was so powerful that I remembered it, that I actually went out and got a gold pen and I wrote her that invitation to be loved and to be adored by the Lord, and I gave it to her on her follow-up appointment. But she blossomed, so those things that came in through the womb, you're not stuck with them. You can be transformed by the renewing of your mind, but there are spiritual implications to that.
Well, it sounds like in that case too. I mean, there's a physical side of this.
Yes.
I mean, there's body, soul, and spirit, and there's physical things, and we talk about the the cytokines and all that. There's that realm, and the medical people could look at that and say medically this happened, but the whole spiritual force behind this is something that people overlooked. This, if you have these curses over somebody or word curses over them or something else that operating in this mother's life, whether it's like even to depression or anger or whatever, that apart from physical issues, physical things manifesting, these spirits can also end up in the baby, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that that's the other side of it that's missing?
Yes, exactly. I think so, because that scripture in John 10:10, it says the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Of course, Jesus came to bring life and life to the fullest, but he's like a roaring lion looking around to see who he can devour. And so you have to recognize that the enemy looks for legal right doors. He can't just jump on it, but all of the condition of a mother while she's pregnant, certainly those are probably demons of fear and depression that are tormenting her, and they cause her body to go out of whack. And so then those spirits are just going to go after that child when it's born too. And so that's why I think a lot of people say, well, I inherited this from my mother, or it came in through the umbilical cord. Well, it kind of did. It did, spiritually and emotionally. So you have probably grown up with it, but there's a time and a place where this needs to go, and I believe deliverance is a big part of that. So both of that.
Yeah, we see it obviously. I mean, and once again, in the physical realm, people, mothers who are like have addictions, or they said crack cocaine or something in them,
Yep.
and they give birth. Well, that baby,
Right.
goes through withdrawal, right?
Absolutely.
And so I guess there is that element as well. So we're looking at both elements, the physical side of it, but also, the spiritual side, and a lot of things people, things we've talked about that people deal with physically, and illnesses and sickness are the result of demonic torment from other spirits in the work in their body, like fear. And we've done other podcasts on that. We don't get too far afield here, but the fact is, a lot of physical things people deal with are because of spirits that are at work in their life.
Right.
So
Right. Well, even like at our recent Release to Soar seminar, we do a deliverance seminar here locally 3 times a year for donation only, where we have a lot of clients that come in, or not clients, but a lot of attendees that come in. And this last one, there was probably close to 50, I think. And one of the young ladies that was sitting in front of me, we don't know anything about them when they come in. They really just come in for the 2 teachings, and then they go through the deliverance on the 3rd day. So it's kind of a quick process in those 3 days. But when I was looking at her, the thing that hit me was that she was just so full of rejection. I could just see rejection all over her. And I asked her, I said, "Were you unwanted?" And she looked straight at me and she said that my mother tried several times to kill me before I was born. that she really tried to kill me. She didn't want me. She hated the fact that she got pregnant, and she tried to throw herself downstairs. She tried to drink different things. She tried to get basically abort her by her own causes, and you could see that disposition of the mother. Boy, when the baby was born, those spirits of rejection just devoured her.
And like you say, we don't know her story, but maybe it could have been that after the birth of the mother was fine. She grew to love that child. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you know the story. I don't
think that was the case.
That was the case. But sometimes that has happened with people, that even the spirits come on their rejection, unwanted, known child. But then it's fine, and the baby, the child grows up and they learn to love that child. But the fact is that what happened at the time, not being wanted or
Unwanted,
not being
right.
wanted to be pregnant, that is the open door for that spirit to be, and it can still be there.
Right. And similar to that would be like children where the mother does go through the pregnancy, but doesn't want the baby and gives it up for adoption. And I think we've seen that plenty of times. And we did a podcast on that recently about babies that are given up for adoption, and the families that they're adopted by just love them completely. But those children are still struggling with those spirits of rejection. Because there's a legal right there for the enemy to begin to torment them with that. You weren't really wanted. They didn't love you. And of course, sometimes with the babies that are adopted, it does take a couple of days before they're actually placed into their adoptive parents. So there's a lack of bonding time in there in the hospital where they're passed around with the nurses, and the nurses feel sorry for them, and so there's that pity, and a lot of that just starts. So I know that brings it up too, but just and I've mentioned this once before, and I wanted to share this one last thing. We had a similar situation in my family where my sister was in the process of being born. She was very, very much wanted and very much anticipated, but the umbilical cord had wrapped around her neck. While she was still in my mother's womb, the doctors spoke that if we don't get this baby untied, this baby is going to die on the day of her birth. Now, they were able to get her untangled from the umbilical cord, and she had a very good birth. But what happened after that was the fact that on her very first birthday, my sister died from strangulation in her sleep. And so that word curse that was spoken over her had power. Nobody knew to break the word curse. Nobody knew to, cancel its assignment, sadly, back then. But my sister did die on the day of her birth, on her very first birthday. So that word curse that was spoken while my sister was still in my mother's womb really carried forth. And so, we've done also some other shows on this as well. We have a separate show that we did called God's View Today. And that show, I believe, is show 14, if you wanted to take a look at that. They're all up on YouTube for you to watch. And so we'll go over a lot of the word curses. There's a couple of shows on there about words and sound that you could actually listen to. But these are just some examples about how the enemy does that and how he can take advantage while the babies are still gestating as fetuses in the womb. So how do you get a remedy to that?
That's the thing. I mean, you're sitting there listening to this, and maybe you know something about your own background, that you've had these things in your life, and maybe curses spoken over you, or I guess that's the question. I mean, we'd like to leave you with some things that you can start to do now. I mean, obviously, a lot of these things we've shared are things we've experienced with people and done deliverance ministry too, but what are some things that people can start to do now, Phyllis, just even in the short run?
Well, I think initially, a lot of us know who spoke these things or how a lot of this started early on. If there were parents that you were born to or different things like that, you need to forgive those who spoke these word curses, really to drop the debt of anything that you would hold over them. And place blame, so that, because I think a spirit of self-pity, when there's a legal right door that was done to you by someone else, that spirit of self-pity is going to try to keep you in the bondage of unforgiveness, because self-pity is a jailer. It takes you to that jail cell of unforgiveness and it locks you in there. So the first thing is to come out of agreement that you're stuck with this forever. recognize that if you do forgive and drop that debt, then that's going to set you in a place where you can go through deliverance and be free. Certainly then, of course, you're going to want to break any ungodly soul ties or emotional bondings with these people. And we've got plenty of reference material up on that. So if you go to our website and type in soul ties, you're going to get more than enough information on how to break that soul tie. But that's necessary. Then cancel the word curses. If you know what was spoken over you, or you know that you weren't wanted or that you were rejected, you want to cancel and sever those word curses from having any authority over your life.
Well, let's just lead an example. I mean, let's just say that some word curse that was spoken, like, hey, I never wanted you, or I wish you'd never been born. Just, I think for the benefit of, was like, what's something along the lines of a sample kind of declaration they could make?
Well, a sample prayer would be just, I cancel and sever every assignment from any word curse spoken over me that I was rejected, unwanted, not loved, or expected, and I cancel the assignment of these word curses in the name and the blood of Jesus Christ. So it's simple. We just want to sever those. And then seek out a deliverance ministry where you're going to be able to get free. Because, I think you can forgive, you can break the word curses, you can cancel the soul ties. Those are all perfect examples to get you walking into that place. But unless those spirits of rejection, hiding, shame, guilt, fear, depression are actually called out of you, then all the other steps aren't going to really help. I think a lot of times people will say, oh, you just need to forgive. But that's not the key to getting rid of those demons. Those demons have had legal rights, and these are the ways to get rid of the legal rights, but the demons have to be called out. And so, going forward, I think that's a good plan. And if you have any children that are being born into your family, I would make sure that you get into that hospital where they're being born and start to speak their true birth assignment that God had for them over them, and cancel. You can do a lot of the canceling over them. If anything's been spoken now, like if you grandmoms that are having grandbabies born, get into those delivery rooms and start speaking their destiny over them and taking back the enemy's plan so that they're set on the right start to begin with. I know my pastor says that. I plan on being at every birth in my family and speaking God's plan over them and canceling any assignment that the enemy has right from the get-go.
Well, and she's got a great perspective that not everybody has.
Yeah.
And I think that's, as we did this topic today, that it's not something that many people are all that familiar with, because many times when we look at our lives or issues, if we're standing at a point and looking backwards, we tend to think from birth forward. What have I done? What was been done to me, and what occultic things and sexual things I've gotten into, and abuse and things I've had from birth forward. And those are all important.
Yes.
But we talked also about generational curses,
yes,
things coming down through the bloodline. And in other places we mentioned, I think that's a huge issue, but probably half to 2/3 of the things people deal with are what's in the bloodline. They're family issues. And once again, those are there and really can be part of a person's life before they draw breath one. But this other element of things and curses, demonic assignments that can be upon the child, just even during or upon the time of pregnancy, even just prior to birth, these word curses, the spirits and the traumas that happen to a mother. And there's other things we've talked about. I think even traumatic births, right? You've talked about things that people go through these traumatic births and trauma, and opens the door and things at birth. Just everything almost from conception to birth. There's this special, and that's what we tried to address here. And so, it's just, if your eyes are open, it's another. Wisdom is knowledge is power in some sense, and knowing, say, hey, this is a potential issue that I haven't overlooked. Especially if you've been through counseling or through things, and let's see if this was an issue, if this brings some memories up for you. So I would encourage everyone just to kind of, think about that, pray about that. Even in doubt, ask your mother, your father, hey, well, what was my pregnancy or your pregnancy like?
Absolutely.
What was it like? Especially, how was it? And or did you say anything? Did you speak anything over me? Or, and it can be done in a kind of a innocent kind of way. Parents may have no idea what you're talking about, but you can still get the data that you want to get and just see. And ask to discern in the spirit. Say, is there anything spiritually going on here that could have been an open door for torment in my life? Yeah.
And I think that's valid because, my parents certainly didn't know anything about demonic torment. And had they, this certainly would have been high on their radar with my sister. But that was a story that was constantly told. So we all knew it. And so I think if you present it to your parents in a format of, look, I want to get free from, things of depression or fear or anxiety. And what was going on in your life while you were pregnant with me? Do you remember anything? I think that they were going to be able to resonate with some of that. I'm sure if my mother had been told some of this stuff, she would have been all over it, but nobody knew. So I always tell my clients, if you've got parents that are alive, consult them on the generational things, consult them on what was spoken over you and were you really wanted and what was going on in your mother's life while she was pregnant, because it all does play a part. That's it. I just think that, God's got a way. He's, God's not a God to leave you in a place of a desert just because of the circumstances of your birth. It says, for every woe, he provides a deliverer. So you're not stuck with what you were born with. And deliverance is going to be a key in getting you into that place of healing and wholeness.
All right. We hope you've enjoyed this. Like I said, kind of a newer topic for us. We touched on it in another podcast, but we felt like it was really going to be good to really devote a session to going into more depth in this whole area. So we hope you find it useful. We'd love to hear from you, feedback on this podcast, and any suggestions for future ones as well. Our counseling website, if you need help, you can get online there, fill out a form, contact form. We can get you hooked up with one of our counselors to talk through an internet session with you. We minister all over the world. We have a Spanish speaking counselor now. Yay! We have resources in Spanish. And so that's out there. So do that as the Lord leads. If you have an interest in being trained in deliverance, the way we do it, you can find that on our Academy website. God calling you to become a Christian counselor, degree and license. We can help you with that. We have a program through the National Christian Counselors Association, so you can become a licensed counselor and get a degree in counseling. So training and resources materials there as well. For lots of free resources on our website as well. You can sign up for our resource library. There's opportunities there to become a partner with us if you want to donate to help us expand the ministry of deliverance there. What's called the Warrior Partners page. You can find that on our website as well. So we hope it's been a blessing to you, and we look forward to hearing from you when we will be back with you next time as we explore another topic in the realm of Christian counseling, deliverance ministry, and spiritual warfare. God bless you.